Hi, I'm Dr. David Dobson. Welcome to Conversations. Conversation is a show that features insightful discussions with scholars worldwide on a variety of academic topics. I started my podcast in January 2023, and it has been running for last 30 months with more than 135 episodes. I try to have at least one podcast or one conversation per week for my show. Primarily, my guests come from LinkedIn, from my LinkedIn network, and they're from all over the world. And my network continue to expand. Currently, I have over 12,000 connections, followers. Uh, so um, I find that initially was not easy because you have no credibility, nobody know you. But I noticed that once you build up a momentum, for example, once people see your work and they feel more comfortable, now it's not that difficult. For me, mine is an individual endeavor. I do it on my own time because I really like doing it, what I do. In terms of the topic, so primarily my podcast is academic podcast, the scholars. So I typically invite the researchers who are doing some research, like PhD students, graduate students, or the university professors, for example, or practitioners if you're doing some research. So I typically keep an eye on their social media posts, like special LinkedIn, if they publish some paper recently or the topic looks very interesting, for example. So I kind of reach out to them, hey, and typically they are agreed to talk about that particular topic. So which is good, but it also created a lot of topics for me because I'm covering pretty much all types of topics from not just, even though I'm from a business faculty, I teach marketing courses, but my topics would also involve agriculture, biology, sociology, political science, economics, all types of topics, which is kind of fun. And again, I kind of go with like what is topic is more interesting and what they are working on this particular for the research project. I primarily post my podcast on YouTube. In terms of my audience is anybody because it's very hard to know really who's watching my audience. However, YouTube does give you analytics. So before the show, I will look at my analytics. I found out that over 75% of my viewers are female, and 60% are aged 45 to 54 and representing from over 2 dozen countries. So it's kind of very interesting stats I have. Um, but I'm also thinking that because a lot of my contents are academic by nature, like scholarly work, so I think that obviously interested audience also includes because it doesn't break down further. I'm assuming that a lot of these viewers are perhaps from university background, university professors, or people who are just interested to learn about some scholarly activities. Because fact is, a lot of people really don't go to conferences or don't look at the journal articles. So I think this scholarly podcast, allows them to get an idea exactly what's happening in the research in the research area, so people can go and learn about the research. Because typically in the podcast, we don't really get into the very science like hard stats. It's more like a general overview of the research that people are working on. So I think maybe it might attracting audience to just get into this research realm and just to see what other scholars are doing in that particular area. So depending upon like because even if each podcast you see the audience changes, like this is overall number I gave you, but you see one podcast interests of one particular group of people, for example. Like I think the people connection is definitely for me is also very important. I also find that for me it's also it's kind of you learning about other people's work. So I think it's for me it's like my personal professional development because for me, I need to read other, like for example, if I'm inviting someone to talk about a research paper, I will read the research paper actually, so I can ask question about the research paper. So I think I find that it's also forcing me to sort of be do some work like professionally, my own professional development in that sense, and being connected to the research world and the researchers. And I think it's also I find that because I try to showcase this academic research as scholars, I think I feel happy that because honestly, a lot of time not every articles are published in the journals, not everybody got accepted in a conference, and I think this podcast allows a platform. Ultimately, for researcher is to share the knowledge, and I think podcast allows a easy platform, a free platform to share the knowledge to to the anybody basically who are interested in. So I think I feel good that This upcoming scholars' work has got some notoriety. They got their audience. They can able to talk about the research. I think, and it's kind of a mobilizing that knowledge to the masses, I guess. So I feel good that I'm be a small part of that knowledge mobilization. For me, the currently challenge is the growth. So I'm happy about my podcast my conversation is growing. But now because I'm like one person doing all this work, so I find very hard to schedule people. It's not difficult to find people now. It's hard to schedule people. And sometimes I overbook myself, for example. I mean, not realizing that I have this podcast, but I have another podcast in the morning also, actually, which I totally forgot about it.
Mm.
So so that's another challenge, and also I think because I do through virtually, so technology also issue because I have a podcast, and all of a sudden the other side there's a power failure. They have no power, and all of a sudden all I see is the darkness. That was kind of odd, but that happens, and I think my another challenge is that time differences. I mean, obviously in Australia it's a beautiful afternoon, and but here in Canada it's a midnight. So, so those are some of the challenges, but overall they are manageable. I guess try to be more smart, I guess, down the road. Yeah, I mean it's kind of interesting because sometimes when I do a podcast or when I do my conversation, and I think that this is a great conversation, and I think this is going to be a very huge success conversation. And then I realized there's only 10 people watched it.
Yes.
I think it depends upon how that podcast, that can just connect to the audience. For example, sometimes you could not really judge yourself, honestly. And yeah, so I thought it's kind of very interesting because sometimes you think, oh, this is a great story and this story should be read by everybody, but then you find out not necessary actually. So because for me, the key is authenticity. I think stay true to yourself. I think because sometimes if there's some other podcasts are successful, we think, oh, maybe we should follow their kind of ideas or their blueprints. I don't think it's going to work long run. I think you need to stay true to yourself. And I also think that because we have guests over, so I think we also have to true to them as well. So we need to come prepared for the conversation and do some homework, really know a little bit about them, so we can really ask um, good questions, good conversations, and finally, I think remember to have fun. End of the day, we want to make sure that it's not like stressful thing. We like this conversation, we like people. That's why we're interested in the story. So I think if you have, to me, this few basic thing, I think is very important for new podcasters, for anybody, I guess.